World News Lib updates African Union backs campaign for world map showing continents' true size. Stay informed with our World News Lib blog, your real-time window into global events. From major geopolitical developments and scientific breakthroughs to royal family updates and cultural milestones, we bring you fast, factual, and curated updates as they happen. Whether it's unfolding conflicts, diplomatic shifts, climate alerts, or key moments in international politics, our live blog keeps you ahead of the news curve. Designed for readers who want both speed and substance, this is your go-to source for staying connected with the world minute by minute, headline by headline. The African Union has officially backed a campaign to replace the 16th century Mercator map in official use by governments and international bodies, as per a report in Reuters. The push is for the adoption of a map projection that more accurately displays the true, vast size of the African continent. The Mercator projection, originally created for navigation, significantly distorts the size of landmasses, enlarging areas near the poles while making equatorial regions like Africa appear smaller than they are relative to landmasses like Europe and Greenland. This campaign aims to correct global perceptions by promoting a more geographically accurate representation of the world, challenging historical visual narratives that have diminished the continent's scale. Greek riot police in the port of Piraeus used a cordon of buses to prevent several hundred protesters from reaching an Israeli cruise ship on Thursday, as per a report in AP. Demonstrators, waving Palestinian flags and holding flares, were part of a series of protests that have followed the vessel to various Greek ports, some of which resulted in clashes with police. Scientific findings show that crops are absorbing microplastics into their internal tissues, which can impede plant growth and reduce agricultural productivity, according to a report in Deutsche Welle. This contamination, stemming from sources like plastic mulches and sewage sludge fertilizers, presents a direct threat to global food staples and security. The economic implications include potential disruptions to food supply chains and increased pressure on agricultural innovation to develop sustainable alternatives, such as biodegradable materials and soil remediation techniques. Furthermore, the issue is driving calls for stricter environmental policies to regulate plastic use in agriculture and mitigate long-term risks to both the food web and climate, as diminished plant health could reduce carbon sequestration. On the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, Japan and China are holding separate and starkly different commemorations, highlighting persistent geopolitical friction and unresolved historical disputes, as per a report in AP. Japan observes the anniversary on August 15, the date of its 1945 surrender announcement, with a solemn ceremony focused on remembering victims. In contrast, China marks its Victory Day on September 3, the day after the formal surrender was signed, with events that showcase its military strength. This divergence underscores deep-seated tensions that impact regional security and economic relations, as the differing historical narratives foster mistrust and influence the defense postures and strategic alliances of both nations. In the Indo-Pacific, the world's first specialized retail store for selling AI-controlled robots has opened in Beijing's Zhejiang district, according to a report in Deutsche Welle. This development represents a significant step in bringing advanced robotics directly to the market, aligning with China's national strategy to become a global leader in AI and robotics. The initiative is designed to accelerate the commercialization and public adoption of AI technologies by showcasing a new model for technology sales and integration into business operations. The United States has imposed sanctions on Brazilian health officials over their alleged involvement in Cuba's overseas medical missions, which Washington characterizes as a coercive labor export, Al Jazeera says in a report. The sanctions target officials connected to the administration of the former Mais Médicos More Doctors program in Brazil, which brought Cuban doctors to the country. This action aligns with the current U.S. policy under President Donald Trump, which has intensified pressure on Cuba to cut off revenue streams. These medical missions are a critical source of foreign currency for the Cuban government, and the U.S. sanctions represent a continued effort to disrupt this economic lifeline. The UK Prime Minister will host Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at Downing Street on Thursday, as per a report in The Guardian. The meeting occurs as European nations anticipate the results of upcoming discussions between U.S. President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart. The UK government has reiterated its readiness to increase pressure on Moscow through additional sanctions if deemed necessary, signaling continued strong support for Ukraine. Barred from running in Bolivia's upcoming presidential election, former President Evo Morales is now campaigning for his supporters to cast null or void ballots as a form of protest, AP says in a report. This Nulo campaign is a strategic move by Morales to demonstrate his continued political influence after a December 2023 Constitutional Court ruling enforced term limits, preventing his candidacy. The campaign is unfolding amid deep divisions within Morales' own Movement for Socialism MAS party, pitting him against the current government led by President Luis Arce, and is intensifying voter cynicism rooted in the country's 2019 political crisis. Israeli Vice Minister Bezalel Smotrich announced the approval of 3,000 new settlement homes in the highly sensitive E1 area of the occupied West Bank, as per a report in Al Jazeera. Smotrich, a far-right minister who also holds authority over West Bank civilian affairs, explicitly stated the project buries the prospect of a Palestinian state and hailed it as Zionism at its best. The E1 area is strategically critical, as construction there would connect the Ma'ale Adumim settlement to Jerusalem, effectively dividing the northern and southern parts of the West Bank and isolating East Jerusalem. This move defies long-standing international opposition, particularly from the US and EU, who view such construction as illegal under international law and a fatal blow to the two-state solution. A New Zealand woman, Sarah Shaw, and her 6-year-old son have been held in a U.S. immigration detention center for 3 weeks after being detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) on July 24 while trying to re-enter the U.S. from Canada, according to a report in The Guardian. The woman's father, Rod Price, has stated he is hopeful that the pair will be released by the end of the week. The launch of a new artificial intelligence model by Chinese startup DeepSeek has been postponed due to challenges in using domestic technology from Huawei for training, the Official Times says in a report. This delay highlights the significant hurdles Chinese tech firms face in achieving self-sufficiency amid stringent U.S. export controls on advanced semiconductors. The difficulties with Huawei's Ascend chips, which serve as the primary domestic alternative, underscore the performance and software ecosystem gap compared to industry-leading solutions from US-based NVIDIA. The incident illustrates the direct business and market impact of geopolitical tensions on China's ambition to lead in AI, forcing local companies to contend with less efficient hardware and potential setbacks in their development timelines. A severe heatwave across historically cool Nordic nations in July was supercharged by the climate crisis, with scientists stating it proves no country is immune to extreme weather events, according to a report in The Guardian. The event saw Finland experience a record 22 consecutive days with temperatures above 30 C86F, and Sweden endured 10 straight tropical nights where temperatures remained above 20 C68F. The unprecedented heat led to significant public health and environmental consequences, including overheating hospitals, a surge in drownings, widespread wildfires, and toxic algal blooms. These developments highlight the increasing strain on public health systems and the urgent need for infrastructure adaptation in regions previously unaccustomed to such extreme heat. A new grassroots initiative in Cyprus is bringing together Greek and Turkish Cypriots to restore neglected cemeteries on both sides of the island's divide in an effort to mend mistrust, according to a report in AP. The project addresses the consequences of the island's long-standing ethnic division, which has left Greek Cypriot cemeteries in the Turkish Cypriot-controlled north and Turkish Cypriot cemeteries in the Greek Cypriot south in a state of disrepair. This intercommunal effort aims to foster mutual respect by acknowledging the shared heritage and loss, operating at a grassroots level amid a protracted stall in high-level political reunification talks. South Korea's Supreme Court has dismissed a $30,121,600 copyright infringement claim by American composer Jonathan Wright against South Korean content company Pinkfong, as per a report in AP. The ruling concludes a 6-year legal battle over the globally popular Baby Shark song, upholding lower court decisions from 2021 and 2023 that found insufficient evidence of plagiarism. This definitive legal victory for Pinkfong solidifies its intellectual property rights over its version of the song in South Korea, removing a significant legal threat to the lucrative Baby Shark franchise, which includes the most viewed video on YouTube, extensive merchandise, and other commercial ventures. 4 staff members at Boston Consulting Group have resigned from a project focused on aid in Gaza, citing early concerns about the work, the Official Times says in a report. The resignations have prompted an internal investigation at the global consulting firm, which is examining how the engagement evolved into a reputational crisis. Prominent Japanese politician Shigeru Ishiba is set to launch a new regional economic initiative aimed at helping Japanese companies expand their operations into India, the Middle East, and Africa, as per a report in the Japan Times. The initiative is part of Japan's broader strategy to diversify its supply chains and enhance its national economic security. For the target regions, the program is expected to attract significant Japanese foreign direct investment (FDI), facilitate technology transfer, and create new employment opportunities. The move is also considered politically significant for Ishiba, a leading contender for prime minister, as it showcases his foreign policy agenda and focus on engagement with nations in the global south. For 80 years since the end of World War II, Japan's security alliance with the US has served as a bulwark, historically containing the Soviet Union and more recently China's ambitions, the Japan Times says in a report. This long-standing relationship is now evolving, driven by heightened regional security concerns, particularly China's increasing military assertiveness. In a significant shift from its post-war pacifist stance, Japan is enhancing its defense capabilities, increasing spending, and acquiring counter-strike capabilities as outlined in its revised 2022 National Security Strategy. This development strengthens the U.S. strategy of fostering a network of alliances in the Indo-Pacific, leading to greater burden sharing and a more proactive security role for Japan in maintaining regional stability. Australia and Vanuatu have agreed to a comprehensive $328 million security and business deal, a move with significant geopolitical and economic implications for the Pacific region, according to a report in BBC. The pact, part of Australia's Pacific Step-Up policy, is a strategic effort to counter China's expanding economic and diplomatic footprint. This agreement reinforces Australia's position as a key development and security partner, potentially influencing regional trade flows and investment priorities, while intensifying the competition for influence among Pacific Island nations. Cricket Australia's chief executive, Todd Greenberg, has issued a stark warning that some rival cricket nations could face bankruptcy if they continue to play the longest format of the game, according to a report in AP. Speaking in Brisbane, Greenberg stated that he believes scarcity in Test cricket is our friend, not our foe, suggesting that a reduced schedule could make the format more commercially viable. The comments highlight the growing official pressures on global cricket boards, particularly as they compete with the rise of lucrative T20 franchise leagues and struggle to make bilateral test series profitable. Over 108 organizations have publicly criticized Israel for what they term the weaponization of aid in Gaza, where millions of dollars in supplies are reportedly being blocked from reaching starving Palestinians, as per a report in Al Jazeera. The group's outcry highlights a worsening humanitarian situation, with UN agencies having previously warned of imminent famine in northern Gaza. The crisis has been intensified by systemic obstacles, including the closure of the critical Rafah crossing since May 2024 and security risks to aid convoys, despite past International Court of Justice (ICJ) orders for Israel to ensure unhindered assistance. Israel denies the accusations, stating that its security checks are necessary to prevent supplies from reaching Hamas and attributes delays to logistical challenges in UN distribution capacity within the territory. Former Peruvian President Martin Vizcarra has been placed in preventive detention over corruption allegations, marking the latest development in a period of significant political turbulence for the nation, Al Jazeera said in a report. Vizcarra becomes the fifth former Peruvian head of state to be jailed recently, a trend that highlights systemic political corruption. His detention is specifically linked to the Vacunagate scandal, in which he is accused of illicitly receiving a COVID-19 vaccine while in office. The jailing underscores ongoing anti-corruption efforts but also contributes to the political instability that has seen frequent presidential turnover, impacting governors and investor confidence. The U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation (FBI) has returned a priceless manuscript page, signed by Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés on February 20, 1527, to Mexico after it was stolen from the country's national archives decades ago, AP said in a report. The FBI stated no charges would be filed because the document had changed hands multiple times, complicating the chain of custody. This repatriation is part of a broader global movement to return historical artifacts to their countries of origin and serves as a significant deterrent to the illicit antiquities market by highlighting the risks for collectors and dealers who do not verify an item's provenance. The event also reinforces bilateral cooperation between the US and Mexico in combating the trafficking of cultural property. The UK government is considering eliminating a key pledge to allocate 80% of its foreign aid to projects that support gender equality, according to a report in The Guardian. Critics have warned that such a policy change could exacerbate the negative effects on global maternal and reproductive health services that resulted from past U.S. funding cuts. These previous U.S. cuts, enacted during Donald Trump's 2017-2021 presidential term, significantly rolled back funding for diversity and aid initiatives abroad. Cape Verde has declared a state of emergency following deadly floods caused by extensive rainfall, with the situation described as catastrophic, according to a report in BBC. The government's declaration has prompted ongoing search and rescue operations to find missing people and assist those trapped by floodwaters. The disaster has caused significant damage to critical infrastructure, including roads and bridges, which is hindering relief efforts and will severely impact the nation's tourism and agriculture-based economy. The government is expected to issue an appeal for international humanitarian aid to support the thousands of people displaced by the event. Rare footage highlights the dire plight of civilians in Sudan's besieged city of El Fasher, where parents are struggling to find food for their children amid a worsening humanitarian crisis, according to a report in BBC. The city, the last major stronghold of the Sudanese Armed Forces SAF in North Darfur, has been under an intense siege by the Rapid Support Forces RSF since April 2024. The conflict has cut off aid routes, leading to acute food insecurity and warnings of an impending famine from the UN. Reports also indicate widespread, ethnically targeted atrocities by the RSF and allied militias, hampering aid operations and increasing pressure on the international community to intervene. The trial for Hong Kong media mogul Jimmy Lai on charges of colluding with foreign forces and conspiracy to publish seditious publications has resumed, according to a report in BBC. Lai is being prosecuted under the National Security Law (NSL) that Beijing imposed on the city in 2020. The case, which began in December 2023, is being closely watched as a key indicator of Hong Kong's judicial independence and the state of its press freedom. The trial is being heard by 3 government-appointed national security judges without a jury, a departure from the city's common law tradition that has drawn international criticism. A conviction could result in a life sentence for Lai, whose pro-democracy newspaper, Apple Daily, was forced to close in 2021. The Toronto International Film Festival TIFF has officially pulled the documentary The Road Between Us: The Ultimate Rescue from its schedule, AP says in a report. Organizers confirmed on Tuesday that the film by Canadian director Barry Avrich was withdrawn due to a footage rights issue. The documentary chronicles the story of a retired Canadian's efforts to save his family and others during the October 7, 2023, Hamas attack on Israel. Chicago Federal Reserve President Austin Goolsbee has signaled uncertainty regarding an interest rate cut in September, a hawkish stance that counters prevailing market expectations for a reduction next month, according to a report in Official Times. As a voting member of the Federal Open Market Committee, Goolsbee's comments introduced potential volatility into official markets and challenged the view that slowing inflation would guarantee a rate cut. His position underscores the central bank's data-dependent approach, which balances recent inflation deceleration against a resilient U.S. labor market, suggesting borrowing costs could remain elevated for longer. A 3-judge panel of Qatar's Supreme Judiciary Council sentenced Remy Rouhani, a prominent figure in the country's Baha'i community, to 5 years in prison for social media posts that allegedly cast doubt on the foundations of the Islamic religion, as per a report in AP. Rouhani, who had been detained since April 2024, received the verdict on Wednesday. The case is being monitored by the Baha'i international community, which has brought international attention to the proceedings and Qatar's laws regarding religious freedom and expression. More than 8.3 million people in Mexico were moved out of poverty between 2022 and 2024, as per a report in AP. This represents a nearly 18% decrease in the number of people living in poverty in the country. According to the data released by Mexico's National Statistics Agency, the number of individuals in extreme poverty fell by